Maybe falling asleep is not the best idea tonight. This world is a strange one. I've had numerous requests to do more sleepover scary stories, and who am I to deny you the nightmares you crave? So tonight, we will be diving back into the sleepovers from hell. The last thing you want to do at these sleepovers is actually fall asleep. So, here are 6 allegedly true sleepover horror stories. Put that sleeping bag away and bring your adult diapers. You'll be needing those more. As always, I do want to let you know which stories we're wanting for future videos. At the moment, I would like any true stories you have about the Goat Man and all of your Bigfoot sightings. Be sure to send them over at darknessprevails.org/submit. Thanks. Now, who wants to spend the night at my place? My house isn't that haunted. Number 1. Something was with us. Submitted by Some Drummer Boy. To start things off, I've always been interested in paranormal and extraterrestrial topics, but personally I've never been much of a believer of them until I began to have some strange experiences of my own. The story that I'm about to tell you is one that has had a significant impact on my life. Let me give you some information on the location where this occurred. This happened in San Antonio, Texas, at a church that I go to. It splits into 3 sections. There's a semi-wooded grassy area, the sanctuary and the children's building in the middle that sits on a small hill, and finally the parking lot. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get on to the story. In November of 2014, me and a few other volunteers from my church had a sleepover on the property. The following events had occurred around 5:45 in the morning. Me and my friend Caesar were by the fire pit that's located in a thicker part of the wooded area close to the gate towards the back of the property. Caesar went back to the children's building to get some coffee while I was sitting by the pit. I looked up to the night sky and I saw a bright light moving in an eastward direction. At first, I thought it was a satellite, but then I realized it was far too big and bright to be one. It couldn't have been a plane or helicopter because it was not blinking or making any noise, despite being so low to the ground. I decided to get up and follow it. That is, until it disappeared into the horizon. As I was walking back to the pit, I saw Caesar standing at the top of the small hill that borders the concrete and grass area. I told him what I saw, and he said that it might have been a satellite or something, just as I thought at first. But in the middle of the conversation, there was what sounded like an animalistic-like screech coming from the other side of the fence by the fire pit. It didn't sound like any known animal that we're familiar with, but it cried out for about 30 seconds straight before everything went silent. We stayed quiet for about a minute before I finally broke that silence. "You want to go back to the pit?" I nervously asked. "Sure," he said. We sat on the chairs by the pit, and as we sat, the sleep started to win me over. My eyes would slowly start to close and I would nod off until I decided to screw it and take a nap. While my eyes were closed, I began to hear what sounded like an electronic distorting sound, like the stereotypical ET sounds or something. I'm trying to figure out what could be causing the sound. It wasn't my phone and Caesar didn't have one. As I was thinking, it suddenly clicked that whatever was making the noise was only inches from my face. I snapped to the direction of the sound. It wasn't there, it was behind me. And I turned around to see if it was there, and it wasn't. It was coming from behind where I was looking. And finally it became clear that this noise was coming from every direction around us. Caesar looked at me like I was going crazy, and he asked me, "Dude, are you okay?" I jerked my head towards him, and I said, "Shh, do you hear that?" "Hear what?" he asked. "A weird noise." He listened and looked very confused as to what was going on. He began to look around. "I don't hear anything." After he said that, the noise only got louder. I hear it now," he said. We had our flashlights out and began to look around the property. The trees were creepy and leafless. No one else was outside with us, and the neighbor's dog was barking non-stop at something, and we knew that it wasn't barking at us because we were too far for it to care about us. We were pretty used to that dog, and we knew something had freaked it out. We began to slowly walk alongside the fence when I noticed something. Each time I took a step, I heard what sounded like someone or something else taking a step with me. When I stopped, it stopped. I would quickly snap my flashlight to where the steps were coming from, but I could not see anything through the cracks in the fence. We walked nervously back to the fire pit while the noise kept whirring. Caesar asked me, "What could be making that sound?" To which I said, "Dude, something is toying with us." After I said that, the noise just stopped, like if their cover was blown and they took off. We were stunned about what happened and decided to go back inside. By this point, it was about 6:15 a.m. When we told everyone about what happened. They were concerned, and ultimately they prayed over us, and our director said not to concern about it anymore. Honestly, this is the first time something like this has ever happened to me. I'm not too sure what to think about this, but I want to be sure about what happened. So call me crazy or insane, but I really want to experience this again, but I highly doubt it'll happen. At least there. Number 2. Ghost at a Sleepover. Submitted by Shelby B. I was at a sleepover with my friend Hannah. The sleepover took place at her house. It was a typical girls' sleepover. You know, pillow fights, spooky stories, staying up all night, that sort of thing. We were alone because her mom was out. At one point, Hannah went to use the bathroom, and I heard her say my name, so I went over. She asked for soap, and I got her some. I heard her again, and I asked her what. But she said she never said my name. Then we heard her mom's voice, but she never came home. At that point, we were scared, so we called her mom and told her what we were hearing. She told us it must have been Hannah just pulling a prank on me, that she does it to her all the time. But I could tell that Hannah was not kidding around. She was scared too. Then we looked at each other with these surprised looks on our faces because we realized Hannah's mom must be hearing those voices as well. Later on, when Hannah's mom got home, we told her we heard her voice as well, not just Hannah's. She said it was probably someone outside. After that, we heard weird sounds like footsteps upstairs, things moving outside, and more creepy stuff. To this day, me and Hannah have absolutely no clue what it was, and it hasn't happened again. I suggested it must have been a ghost or spirit, but Hannah doesn't believe in them, so she said it was our guardian angels in her house. I believe in God and angels, but I know for a fact that that was no angel. Probably the exact opposite, because why would it want to scare us like that? I just hope I never see that thing or hear it ever again. Number 3. Near BreakIn. Submitted by NitYes. Back when I lived in upstate New York, I had a good friend who I'll call Jacob for privacy purposes. We used to spend the night at each other's houses almost every weekend, usually when we didn't have school and sometimes even during the weekdays. We were just really close. Now, this story occurred during the summertime when we had the entirety of every day to hang out. I did have a few other friends close by, but not very many, because I dislike socializing and the fact that almost every other student in my high school was creepy in their own way. One day, Jacob asked if I wanted to spend the night, and of course I said yes. I was already at his place at the time, so I didn't need to walk anywhere. Jacob lived with his family and owned 2 dogs and a cat. One of the 2 dogs was rather large and scary to me. But in actuality, he was gentle and slept with me and Jacob almost every night. Going back to the story, we played for about 3 hours, and then we went out for a walk in the night. Now, we had this really creepy guy who lived nearby. He would stop by my place all the time, and I've heard some bad stories from my brother and other friends, but he never actually scared me that much. Another thing about this guy was that he never owned a car or anything motorized. Instead, he would ride a bike everywhere he went. Anyway, so me and Jacob went to the local gas station to get some drinks and chips for a movie. By this time, the other stores were already closed, and Walmart was too far to walk, so we didn't really have any other options. We quickly got back without anything happening, and we got back to watching our movie. Partway through, one of his friends gave Jacob a call and requested his help with something. I can't remember what exactly. So Jacob left for a moment to go help his friend, telling me that I could use his computer to watch more movies on or to play some games. By this time, it was nearing 2 in the morning, and I thought it'd be cool to watch some anime. About an hour into viewing my anime, Jacob's dog started freaking out and barking at the door. From where I was sitting on a couch which was right next to a window that was right next to his front door. I looked over the couch and out the window, only to see some guy on a motorcycle sitting there staring right back at me. I was mostly surprised at first because I thought it was one of his neighbors. But this guy, he didn't move from where he was at all, and the fear slowly caught up to me until I went to his kitchen to grab a knife. I went back to the front door to see the guy still standing there. To be honest, I'm rather passive. I wouldn't act aggressively to anyone unless they posed a serious threat to me or any of my friends. One such scene was back in class when a female student started flipping out and going crazy, throwing objects all around the room. The teacher actually had to have our help to subdue her, and I'll leave the rest for you to imagine. Now, back to the story. This guy just stood there, completely still for about 10 minutes. I finally opened the door, and I stood halfway outside so I could run back in without a problem. We continued to stare at each other for another 3 minutes before he started up his engine, and he just sped off down the road. I remained on edge for the rest of the time until Jacob finally returned, and I told him everything. He said that it might have been his neighbors, and at the time I agreed with him, so he wouldn't get scared himself. Then he went to his room and crashed. I, on the other hand, would sleep in the living room, but I just laid there for an hour, still scared, and it took me forever to finally fall asleep. The next day was pretty normal. We got up, ate breakfast, and got back to some video games, specifically Grand Theft Auto, which we never got bored of. His computer at the time wasn't being used, so I seized the opportunity to check my Facebook, since I haven't done that in a few days. One of my friends had posted that they woke up for no good reason, and they wrote on their post that there was a creepy guy outside who just stared at his house for a long time. No further experiences like that night have happened, and I now live in another state, with my contact with Jacob growing smaller and smaller every month. Now I barely talk to him, and I'm rather curious about how his life is going. He was planning on going to a public school rather than being homeschooled. As for that night, I just can't forget about it. Because who just stares in at someone like that for so long? It was the most awkward and terrifying moment of my life. I mean, if he wanted in, all he'd have to do was break a window. Number 4. Unreal Logic. Submitted by Elijah. I used to live in a house in Utah. I had a neighbor named Leo, and he was my best friend, and he still is to this day. We would always mess around with my Nerf guns out in the dark, and we would pretend to be shooting up ghosts. And whenever we went down to the basement of my house, we would always run back upstairs because we were scared. And sometimes we'd run back down there going up and down the stairs singing "We Are Men" from the SpongeBob movie. It made us feel a bit better. Until one time when we went down there, everyone was gone and all the lights were turned off. Leo was right next to me, and there was a door to the washing machine and dryer with a doggy door for my cat to use the litter box in there. Anyway, when we went down there, we got this bad feeling like something was down there or something bad was going to happen. Keep in mind, my family's very Christian and we have crosses all over the place. So Leo and I go down there, and we pass by the door to the right, and Leo jumps and screams. He's shaking and almost crying at this point. He says something grabbed his foot. We sat there and stared at each other in fear. We were so scared we didn't even look. We went into the basement because we didn't know what to do. We just stood there facing the dark, waiting for something. Until suddenly, a shadow enveloped the room in front of us, and a figure slowly rose up out of it. Honestly, I couldn't freaking breathe. I was so terrified. I looked over at Leo, and he just stood paralyzed in disbelief, and I noticed that all the crosses in the room were somehow gone. I looked back at the thing, and it was taller and growing bigger. At that point, it must have been at least 7 feet tall now. So, like an idiot, Leo fires his Nerf gun at it, and it just goes into the dark abyss of the thing. I'm not sure if him shooting at it was some sort of nervous twitch, or if he was just trying to shoot it, but we got the hell out of there. We moved faster than we've ever moved before. Upstairs, we were partly crying and partly shaking. So we tried to calm down and started to play some games. For the longest time, we couldn't play the game at all. We just kept looking over our shoulders and watching the basement room door. It took a few hours for us to settle down. When my parents got home, we decided we should just keep quiet about it, and we never said a word. To this day, I've never mentioned this to anyone. It scared me just thinking about it staring back at us. I don't want to know what would have happened if we would have stayed there too long, or if we would have touched the thing ourselves. I never saw that Nerf dart again. Just remember, always be safe and don't mess around with stuff like that. There is power beyond this world, stuff we have no clue about. Number 5. Go Away. Submitted by Unknown. This story might not be too long, but it is a truly scary experience, a horrific one. I love hanging out with my friends. Let's call them Kim, Melissa, and Sarah. All of my friends and I are very weird and can be very curious. This explains a few things. One thing Kim, Melissa, Sarah, and I love to do is when I sleep over, we go down to this waterfront park and 7-Eleven store they live by and usually get Slurpees and chips at the 7-Eleven. Usually we start walking down there at night. And that's what we did this night. We passed the park and the waterfront and we got our snacks at 7-Eleven. When we were done paying, we began walking. Before I continue, I need to mention this small path. It's not surrounded by trees or anything like that. It was very out in the open, and it leads to a benching area. Anyway, we're walking down this path with our snacks. I'm walking in the front, and I see a bike and a bag in front of us. The first thing that popped in my head was, oh no. That's because I'm very obsessed with Web of Lies. It's a show about murder cases. Then I hear someone talking from behind a large bush that can probably hide 2 or 3 grown men behind it. My friends behind me have no idea what's going on, and I motion them to go back, but they won't listen. I had stopped walking down the path, but they kept walking and went ahead of me. As they did, the older sister saw 2 men behind the bush, and when they did, one of them hissed at us, and that's when everyone ran. I was terrified, but Kim, the older sister, wanted to go back for some reason. I guess she wanted to confront them. I turned back toward her, and she was now walking toward us in a hurry. She had a very bewildered and confused look on her face. The men were behind us, slowly walking towards us, yelling, "Go away," and screeching and hissing at us still. When we were finally a good distance away from those weirdos, Kim, the oldest of us all, who had gone back to confront them, told us all something that we would never forget. She said that one of the guys behind the bush was jerking off. After that, we called it quits early and decided to go home. So next time you think you're going to investigate something, don't, because you never know what would happen. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that you don't want to see, and there's some very messed up people who want you to be a part of it. And number 6, He Won't Go, submitted by Finlay D. It's taken me a while to open up about this experience, to actually tell people about it. Of course, my family knows and close friends, but now the internet will too. This is still going on right this minute. Things will happen in the near future, maybe finding out who this person is. Hopefully the worst won't come from it, like me going missing or maybe even dying. I'm a small 13-year-old female. I'm about 4'2" and I'm pretty skinny, but I'm strong enough to fight back. At the start of August, I got a phone call and it was from an unknown number. I never answer these calls, but my friend said that she would call on her grandma's phone, so I answered. Let's call her Naomi. I answered the phone, and this is what happened. Hello? I said. Person on the other end. Hello? Now, I didn't know who this was, and it was a dry, throaty whisper. Naomi often did this voice herself when she answered the phone, so I honestly thought it was her. So I replied, Naomi, hi, how was the plane ride back? Did you get sick? I've missed you so much. My friend Naomi had gone to Tokyo for a month, and I missed her a lot. The person on the other end said, Good. I didn't get exactly sick, but I have a sore throat, and I've missed you too. Me. Aw, poor Naomi. My phone's about to die. Do you want to Skype with me? Then they replied, I can't. I look terrible. Me. Oh, come on. I look terrible too, but who cares? and the person on the other end replied, "I gotta go to my mom. She wants me to clean my room. Bye." So I said bye, Naomi, and I told her to Skype when she could. I hung up the phone. I then went to feed my dogs and played with them for a bit. It felt kinda weird when Naomi didn't want to Skype, because we're like best friends, and she never says no to a Skype call. Then something was bothering me. Her accent didn't match right. It was subtle, but it was different enough to bother me. And now that I thought about it, she had a very Irish accent, but whoever was on the phone sounded Scottish, if that makes any sense. Whoever this sick person was, they had my number. I thought maybe I was just freaking out over it, maybe looking too much into it. So I finally decided to go ahead and Skype Naomi. And I freaked out even more, because she answered, and she was still in Tokyo. So whoever called me had my number and pretended to be my best friend. Who the hell were they, and why would anyone do that? I started to get really scared. My parents were out for the weekend and I had nobody to go to. I ran and locked the front and back doors and tried to calm down. Eventually, I was starting to settle down, and I ordered some pizza from Pizza Hut. I then called my other best friends over for a sleepover to feel safer. Let's call them Leia and Brooke. They both came over in about 10 minutes, and I told them everything that had happened, and I was starting to feel better. Soon the doorbell rang, and we all jumped up. "Must be the pizza," I said. We pigged out and chilled out for about 2 hours until we heard my back garden gate slam shut. Now, my gate is a heavy metal gate, and it's rusty, so it's hard to open. Even I have a lot of trouble opening it sometimes. But it sounded like whoever it was opened it with ease. It was very fast and sudden. I was getting freaked out again. My dogs saw me and they started barking. Either that or they heard it too. It was around 7 at night, so the sunlight was fading fast, and what was left, there was enough to see outside just barely. My security light turned on, luckily, and what we saw was just my dog groomer. She was bringing back one of my dog's leads in her hand. I unlocked the door and thanked her, and we all laughed at us being idiots and screaming. Then we decided to walk the dogs together, because they needed to do their business after all. What happened next, though, almost gave me a heart attack. My phone got a notification. It was a photo from the same number that pretended to be Naomi. The photo was of my dogs outside at that very second, with us in the background on Snapchat. The caption of the photo said, "Are we having fun, girls? You're not paying any attention to your doggies." We opened the back door and shouted to the dogs to get inside. We locked it and called 999 right away. Once the police got over, I showed them everything and told them about the phone call. Now, in the photo this faker had of us, we had been taking a picture, and the police asked to see it, just in case the perpetrator was accidentally caught in it. In fact, the most terrifying thing was this photo. At the very back of the garden, a tall man around 6 feet was standing there, taking a photo with a sharp object in his other hand. Nothing terrible has happened since, except for the occasional knocks at the windows or bangs at the door. I'm honestly horrified, and I'm thinking of getting a pit bull for some extra safety. The police don't have anyone in custody yet, but they're still looking, or maybe they just don't care because nothing has happened. Either way, I hope I'm okay, and I'll definitely keep you updated. If you are one of those lucky folks with friends, I'm sure you have sleepovers with them all the time. It's part of being a kid or a teenager, staying up all night to play video games, to talk crap, or to go out in the woods at night. But no matter how much you laugh or enjoy the company of your friends, the horror will always find their way inside. There will be creeps outside your window, strange beasts preying upon you, and evil spirits watching just outside the corner of your eye. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to send us your true stories of Bigfoot or Goatman sightings today at darknessprevails.org/submit. Thanks.